Hey everyone, welcome to the Career Show with Ashish Gupta. And today I have a very special person with me, Professor Kajori Sen. Professor Kajori Sen has been in media industry for last 15 years. She has worked with a lot of top media channels and currently working in academics. So Professor Kajori started with NDTV, and she started when she was still a college student, which is a great thing. And then she moved in just 2, 3 years. She moved to become an anchor, and then in 2014 she joined CNN News 18 as associate business editor and senior anchor. And she has also done a lot of prime time shows. And in 2017, she decided to leave journalism and join academics. And currently, she is working with Jindal Global University, the rank one university in India as a private university. And she is working with Jindal School of Journalism as a professor. So, welcome to the show, Professor. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Ashish. I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So, we thought that it is very important for students to get the first hand information from people who have done that, because most of the time we get people who are mostly in teaching and do not have the professional experience of the industry. So when people who have the both the sides, who have realized both the side, who have experienced both the side just like you, I believe you are the perfect person to guide and to update them on what exactly both in university as well as in the media industry, in uh, professional life. So, Professor, before we start, would you like to speak something about yourself, your journey so far, and some of your achievements so far?
Sure. Thank you for that, Ashish. So, as Ashish correctly pointed out, I was started as a journalist when I was still in college, completely by accident. I'd always been slightly interested in journalism because in the late 90s, when I was still in school, uh, NDTV and in particular Barkha Dutt was a phenomenon. Her Kargil reporting was on television everywhere. And if you were a young girl watching, television at that point, you wanted to grow up to be Barkha Dutt. That and then I joined college and I was studying English literature. I didn't think about it until after my first year, when I was at home, much like a lot of the students that we're talking to would be getting really, really bored. So I decided, there's no point in sitting at home. I'm going to go put my CV out in the market. So I went to various places in person because that's how you did it in those days. Dropped off my CV. And then I got a call back from NDTV saying, would you like to join as an intern? And I said, absolutely. So I worked with NDTV for 2 months and then obviously went back to college, forgot all about it. And then NDTV called me 6 months later and said, we are starting a new channel called NDTV Profit. Would you like to join? And I was like, you do realize I know nothing about how any of this works. And they said, well, you learn. And I did. And so in January of 2005, when I was still in second year college, I started working for NDTV. I worked with them for 9 years, starting off on the desk. The scrolling tickers? So my
Correct.
first job was filling those for hours, like a 7-hour shift, and all I did was fill in tickers.
Oh,
And then slowly went out reporting, then started anchoring, then was foreign correspondent, came back to India, became editor. So it's been a very long journey in television for me, and it's very exciting to see young people enter the profession, because in a lot of them I see the kind of sort of energy and verve and enthusiasm that we had back in those days.
right. So I have noticed one thing here, that you did not started as a TV anchor from day one,
No, and nobody does.
but you
So
became
this
one.
is, you work your way up to it.
Right.
So this is, I think, and I get this question a lot from young people, which is, how do I become an anchor? And
Right.
the answer to that is, you have to understand how everything else works before you become an anchor. Anchoring is probably, live television news anchoring is probably one of the most difficult jobs in television, because you don't have the luxury of writing a script, you don't have the luxury of thinking things through, you don't have researchers working for you. Everything is happening in real time. So you have to understand how the production works, you have to understand how the desk works, and you have to understand how reporting works, and you have to have enough knowledge and ability to talk on your feet. The first time I anchored, that was 2 years into the business, I froze in my first 10 seconds. Like, I froze, apologized on air. I got yelled at by my bosses for like days after that. because you will mess up. It's very difficult. You've got somebody in your ear saying, hey, breaking news coming in. We can't get the reporter on the line, talk about it. And you're like, say, what do I say about it?
I don't know anything about it.
I don't know anything about it. I've had news coming in about plane crashes. And I literally have gone.
Don't know anything about aviation industry, how it works. Exactly. So you
luckily, Exactly. So luckily, I worked as an aviation reporter for 3 years, which meant that I did know enough about the aviation industry.
And you have no connection with aviation industry
at all. But this is why it's so important to work on the desk and to work as a reporter before you become an anchor, because otherwise you will drown.
Exactly. So I have noticed two things here, that one is constant learning and second is consistency and hard work, which works in long term.
Yeah, always. Right. So constant learning, I think, is the most important part of it. Exactly. Never think you know everything about anything. You don't. And you don't need to as a journalist. Your job is not to be an expert. Your job is to understand enough to be able to ask the right questions to the experts. Right? Exactly. So you can't be a complete idiot. You can't be like, hey, what is a rupee? How does it depreciate? You have to understand what the implications of it are. So that if there is a economist that you're interviewing, you're like, okay, so the rupee is depreciating. What are the implications of this for business? What are the implications of this for education? You have to be able to guide those conversations. So you have to read. I cannot stress this.
So basically, if I concise it, this is what you are saying, that you have to become jack of all trades and master of your own trade.
That is exactly correct. That is exactly what you need to do.
Right. So because you need to learn. So now the second phase I want to talk about now is that why the transition from media, from corporate to academics, and then what is your experience from corporate to academics?
The primary reason I moved from journalism to academia was because I've always wanted to teach.
Okay.
Like this has been true my whole life. I've always wanted to be a teacher. And I was, in fact, even before I applied to Jindal, I was considering going for my PhD. And I have a family which comes from academia. My father is an academic. My uncle and aunt are academics. My grandfather was in academia. So I know what that world is like. And all of them said, before you get a PhD, find out whether you like teaching. So I said, okay, fair enough. So luckily for me, thank God, the Jindal School of Journalism was starting up at that very point. So I applied and I got in. And now it's been 3 years and I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. But they're two very different spaces. Teaching journalism is incredibly fulfilling, having students respond. And you learn as much from students as they learn from you, sometimes more. I can tell them how the industry works, but they understand social media, new visuals, images, things like that in a way that I have no chance of understanding. They ask questions that would never even occur to me to ask. So it's incredibly fulfilling. But every day of my life, I miss the high of the newsroom. Because it's a little bit like a drug. I swear to God it is. It's an actual high. When you've got a breaking news story and everybody is going wild trying to put it up before anyone else does, you're flying.
Right.
That's never going to be replicated in academia.
Satisfaction of doing that work.
Yeah.
So that's
and that's why people become this. Don't do it for the pay.
Right.
Journalism can be relatively well paid, but it's never going to pay you like law pays you, for example. Like it's never going to be a really, really high income space.
And it is constant running high every day. So you don't have a day where you are low, because every day you have to break the news.
You're never going to get bored. You're never going to be bored.
Exactly.
You're never going to be bored and you feel like you're making a difference. Right. That's everybody I know who has gone into journalism and who has stayed in journalism has done it for those two reasons. You're never bored. You're meeting new people. You're engaging with new stories. You're getting this incredible high from breaking a story, and you are, and that's the reward. It's the reward. And every time you do something, you feel like you are making a small difference to them.
True. That is
even if it's
the most important thing.
It is. It's a very, very good feeling. I have had people call me after stories that I've done saying, thank you, because of your story this has happened. And there are very few rewards like that. The only reward I think of which is as close is coming back to you and saying, you opened my eyes. I never thought I'd see. I thought about something like that. And they're both very rewarding in very different ways.
Especially, I think in these time when we have seen the COVID, we have seen the lockdown, we have seen the emergency situations, not just in India, but around the world. We have seen people in panic because of this. And that time, I think journalism became even more important. News anchors became even more important in all of our life because of getting the right information and not creating a panic situation, so that we know what exactly is happening around us across the world and how things are shaping.
Ashish, even more than news anchors, I have to shout out to the reporters who've been on the ground. We talk about doctors and we talk about, sanitation workers as frontline workers. Right. I think a lot of young journalists in the last few months have been as much of a frontline worker as a doctor or a nurse. They have been putting in extraordinary hours to try and get us the information that we need to know, to hold people accountable, to get us the real details. I know personally at least 10 journalists who've been infected with COVID-19 because of the kind of work they've been doing on the front line. And these are all young people. Yeah. The reporters who've been out doing this are between 24 and 34. These are young, enthusiastic people putting quite literally their lives on the line. I know a young colleague who was in a quarantine facility in Baroda, in the middle of nowhere, because she had been reporting. And these, I think, the people we have to respect. This is the kind of work that our young journalists are doing.
So a big shout out to all the ground reporters from our side, and kudos to your work, because of which we got the information which was much needed. So Professor, there's one more thing which I wanted to understand, that you have been a college student and you see college students today. What is the difference you see, and is it for good, or you want to give some suggestions on that, especially to the young students who are still in college or want to come in college?
Young students today are much more focused than we were at their age. When I started my undergraduate program, I had absolutely no clue what I wanted to do with my life. And nobody expected me to know what I wanted to do with my life. Right. College for us was meant to be when you discovered what you wanted with your life. Today, kids come in being like, this is what I want to be, I want to do it. They've already done so much work even before they come to college. And I think I have a massive amount of respect for that, because knowing what you want to do is so difficult. I mean, I'm 34 years old and I still don't know what I want to do. And these kids are so focused. It's incredibly impressive. However, that also has a flip side, because I want them to enjoy their youth in the way we did, to experiment, to try out different kinds of work. Hyper focus on one hand is very beneficial, but hyper focus can also mean that you're losing out on so many other opportunities. I think the way that our educational system is these days is focusing on one option and nothing else. So you've got people coming in being like, I want to go into advertising. And I'm like, but you don't know what it's like. You've never worked in that space. By all means, go into advertising. I'm not saying don't, it's a fantastic profession, but keep your vision open, try other things out, see how it works for you, experiment a little bit. And I think that's the message that I want to give. Nothing wrong with hyperfocus, it's fantastic, but also leave your options a little more open and flexible. When I'm talking to young students and they say, I don't know what I want to do, and there's a fear from some of them when they say that, as if there's something wrong with being 18 and not knowing what to do. And I'm like, no, that's fine. You're great. You've the rest of your life to figure out what to do. Don't worry about it. And it's okay to have that.
I think this is an amazing message, that you still have a lot of time. I mean, 18, 20, 22, 24, it's not over. You have a lot of time. So Professor, there are two things which I am constantly seeing, and then I want your views on that. One is the overflow of content on social media. And second is negative influence, because today everyone is an influencer. Anyone can pick the camera and become an influencer. So at
Yeah.
times I see the negative influence coming in rather than becoming a positive influence. So what are your views and on students on how to tackle this overflow of content on social media, and how they can take care of themselves in this negative influence, the word of negative influence or influencers, maybe I can say.
You know, there is no right answer to this. Different people engage with social media in different ways. But I will say that, and I know I sound like I sound very old when I say this. I think the most valuable thing you can do for yourself is to curate your experience on social media.
Correct.
On just because somebody has 100,000 followers doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying is good or right or valuable. I think developing a sense of discernment is important. That's one. Second, remember anything that goes on the internet is there for it. When you are putting something up on the internet, you can try and delete your profiles, but if it's on the internet, somebody will have taken a screenshot, somebody will have taken a recording, somebody will have saved it somewhere. Every time you put something up, ask yourself the question, is this something that you would want a job recruiter seeing 3 years down the line?
Wow.
Ask
Wow.
yourself that
I
question.
mean,
And if you
this is
don't put it up.
this is completely wonderful and mind blowing that even yes, we have seen that even the recruiters today see your social media profiles. They see that what, and it instantly reflects what your person as a person, what exactly your views and how you are doing on social media. So that's a perfect answer that
On one
3 years
hand, it's
down the
very
line.
unfair,
Yeah,
Ashish. You and I are about the same age. We
correct.
made a lot of mistakes in our youth, which
That's
luckily
true.
was never put up anywhere on the internet. So
True,
people,
very
it
true.
is completely out of people's knowledge or imagination. There is no way people can find any evidence of our wrongdoings as a young person. And I don't think that something that someone said or did when they were 17 should be held against them when they're 25. But
Correct.
it will be. That's the problem. It doesn't go away. If a recruiter goes back, Googles you, and they will, and finds that you've said something, sexist or something racist or something, politically vile or violent, even if you were young and stupid, that is a black mark. And that is always going to be on your permanent record.
That's true. And we have seen a lot of cases like that. We have seen cases where people have taken 5 years old content, 3 years old content, and then brought it in public, and then you become a victim of your own sins,
Absolutely.
we can say.
Yeah.
So that's really a wonderful point to notice that uh, you cannot see that what you are doing. You have to be very careful when you are putting something on social media and how you are reacting and commenting on others' posts, right? So this next thing, that a lot of people have this skeptic view on journalism as an industry, because they think that with social media coming in and with social media wherein every person has access to social media and create content, will the journalism industry or media industry survive on its own, or is it the common people take over in providing information? Because today I'll add one more point, because see, Twitter being in picture today, news is breaking even faster on Twitter than in the real newsroom. Second is
Oh,
every person is a reporter. Tomorrow I can take a picture and upload on Twitter, and it can become viral if it is really worth it. So what are your views in that context for future of journalism and media?
So this is something that we are constantly sort of tackling with as well. We're also engaging with it, being like, what does this mean? I don't think it will kill journalism. I think there is very real fear that it will kill journalism, but I don't think it's going to happen. And the reason for that is fairly simple. I have now tracked social media for, oh God, 11 years. In 2010, 2011. So 2006, of course, Facebook does its Facebook thing. 2008, Twitter becomes a big thing. 2006 is also when YouTube starts becoming a big thing. At this point, there is, so from 2010 onwards, there is a lot of discussion which is taking place about uh, how these social media platforms can be used to enhance journalism.
Right.
Okay, how it can be used to take it forward. today the conversation has already, in a matter of 10 years, has started shifting to how dangerous these platforms, how these platforms are playing a critical role in spreading misinformation, in fake news.
True.
Okay.
So we are seeing this term WhatsApp University. It has become
Exactly.
famous for that.
Exactly. WhatsApp University. You are seeing a lot of pressure on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook to constantly hone their terms of service.
Terms of service.
Their
True.
TOS, right? Facebook was literally taken to court for that, being like, what are your terms of service? How are you protecting your users?
Exactly.
That is...
In fact, it made me very sad recently when I saw the anti-mask propaganda in US, and wherein even Zuckerberg has to come on social media and request people to wear masks because people were spreading this news that it is just another scam in making, that they want you to wear mask, or this is just a propaganda or something. COVID is not real and all that. So that really made me sad.
Exactly. And so you think about those spaces. So the conversation has gone, and I remember this in 2010, we were like, this is going to transform the way citizen journalism works. This is going to transform the way that the engagement of the public and the press works. To 2020, where we're like, please do not believe everything you're seeing on social media. Shocker, people lie. And sometimes they lie in all innocence. Sometimes they lie with a purpose. And there is no way to hold them accountable for it. You cannot take a Twitter user to court. You cannot take a Facebook user to court because they're like, we were just giving our private views, because they are private citizens. The media, I'm not saying that the media is completely faultless when it comes to the kind of news it does, but at least there has to be a minimal level of accountability. I can see that I know that there are news channels which currently are very close to that minimal level, but there has to be a minimal level of accountability. They have to, if proved wrong, apologize and retract that news. I think that in the next 10 years, what we will see is the conversation going from don't believe social media to how can social media and journalism coexist and make each other better.
That's correct.
Because you can be the first source, but we will always be the verifiers. And this is why journalism will not go anywhere. You need verification, you need reliable information. And as distrust in social media grows, there will be a reinforced need for good, honest, reliable, objective journalism.
True. Because in India, you still have 40 to 50% people who are yet to join internet, or who are yet to come on mainstream internet. So my biggest fear is that when these people come on internet and they fall prey to the fake news, it would become a big trouble for all of us, because
Ashish, it already is. Those 40 to 50% aside, between 2010 and now, India has seen the fastest growth of any country when it comes to smartphones and internet usage on the phone. And this is particularly true in small town and rural India, right? Now, for a lot of people, you may not be able to afford a 15,000 rupee TV, but you can afford a 3,000 rupee phone.
True.
Right?
That's true. That's true.
That has become their first source of information. The WhatsApp message is their first source, as you were saying, of information. Correct. They may not even have access to other sources. In a lot of cases. Remember, a WhatsApp message requires much less broadband than streaming Aaj Tak or whatever.
That's right. Correct. Very true. Yeah. You don't need any bandwidth.
You don't need any bandwidth. So imagine that you're living in the middle of nowhere, okay? You have managed to buy yourself a smartphone. You have spent 5,000 rupees you have saved up, and your company might be giving it in installments, and you have bought a smartphone, and now you have data, and you're getting videos from family members, and that is your source of news. True, false, whatever, that is your source of news. your only other source of news probably is that one TV in the middle of the village that has been bought by the sarpanch.
Right.
Right. So you've got this coming to you right there in your phone. Maybe 5 hours later you'll see the TV, but in between you've already believed what has been said to you.
That's correct. That's correct.
And until
sometimes it's 5 hours, sometimes it's even 5 days, and sometimes it's never.
It's 5 days. Sometimes it's never. Govindraj Etharaj, who runs this thing called Boom, which basically is like alt news. They're fact checkers. I was once in a panel discussion with him, and Govind said that this was right after, I don't know if you remember this, Ashish, but in Assam, these two Bengali boys who were lynched because they thought they were child kidnappers. Happened, I think, a year and a half or so ago. So in Assam, basically, these two Bengali boys who had gone there for hiking or something like that, early 20s, and they were caught and lynched because there was a rumor going around on WhatsApp that people are coming from outside to kidnap children. Child lifters.
Right.
And so Govind was talking about that episode, and he said, here's the thing. How do you want news to do anything about it? This is circulating in a small village. Riots are happening like this. Lynching is happening like this. Lynching is not happening, from 10 days ago. It's happening within 15 minutes. You're gathering mobs within 15 minutes.
Right.
Who has time to fact check something within 15 minutes?
Exactly.
So what journalism has to do, and journalism is now trying to do it, is devise ways to get information to these people before WhatsApp does.
Exactly. So I was going through this Twitter journey, and in 2006 when they started as a side project, and then in end of 2007, Twitter was actually picked up as a main project, and there is only one reason behind that, because US had seen a plane crash, and someone who was there on the spot clicked a picture and posted on Twitter, which went viral before the media actually breaks it. And that was the beginning of Twitter. So it makes a lot of sense for the kind of future of news. It gives a lot of hints to us on what the future of media is going to look like.
The future of news is very simple. The future of news is that viewers need to see their viral pictures, see their viral information, because there will always be people on location who will have information before I. There's nothing I can do about that. I can't be in 10 places or 100 places or 1,000 places at once. But people have to then wait for the news to tell me whether that is true. People have to wait for me to tell them what the context is. Why did this happen? Where did this happen? Did it happen at all?
At all, exactly.
Yeah. So today, the role of news is that of verifier rather than the breaker of news. And I think that is the shift that we're going to see in the next days.
Exactly. So I think I have personally made a habit for a few years that whenever I see anything on social media, I first go to Google, search it. If I see the news coming from a trusted media channel, then only I believe it. Till then, it's a fake news for me. As simple as that. Even when I receive on WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram, I don't believe at all.
Which is, I think, the only real way to do it. Don't believe anything unless it has been verified.
Exactly. So that is the
and I would actually advise you to look at more than one source, because one source can get it wrong. Right. Multiple sources verifying it, then you're good.
So when I say one source, that means the top 10 media brands. If that is not a top 10 media brands,
this is bringing up a new larger discussion. And the new larger discussion, Ashish, is, do people trust the media brands?
So
right?
Now
you've gone there. Now we have to go there.
I don't.
Now we have to go.
Yeah, I don't think we have solution to that. We have to live with that as of now until something big comes up.
It's very interesting when you think about the idea of trust. Because I think one of the dangerous things that social media has done, Ashish, is make us want to believe only what we want.
And that's how it's designed.
Yeah. So anybody who's saying, that's exactly how it's designed. It's the echo chamber. Okay,
It's
so if
designed to
I
make
say,
us spend more time, and it's designed to make us believe what they want us to believe.
yeah, and
That's it.
we're humans, right? We social beings. If enough people tell us that we are right, we're like, yeah, we're right.
Correct.
That's
correct.
how it works. If enough people tell you that the sky is, pink, you'll be like, well, okay, if everybody thinks the sky is pink, it must be pink.
And also there's a
So
saying that keep repeating until they believe.
yeah. Now, when big media spaces are like, no, that's a lie, then most of us feel that we have personally been attacked because we believe this and we must be right. How can you tell us that what we are saying is a lie?
What we are
And
saying.
then
Exactly.
you must have a political agenda.
Exactly.
Okay. So I think the real danger for journalism is not social media, is that erosion of trust.
Yeah. So what I say is
Journalism
that
has to build up trust again.
so what I say is that in recent 2, 3 or 5 years, you are not remained a neutral. You are either right or left.
The question is, what is neutral? Huh? Now, when people are like, and I get this all the time. I get this on social media constantly. They're like,
Correct.
you are a liberal. And I'm like, well, I don't know why you're saying that like it's a dirty word. I mean, yeah, it's okay. I am a liberal. I mean, you eat meat. I'm like, this is also true. I eat meat. Again, I'm not sure why you're saying that like it's a bad thing.
Right.
But so on and so forth. Many, many other things. And so the question of neutrality, if I say that the government is doing a bad thing, that is not me being right or left, that is me being a journalist. My job is to constantly question the government.
Correct.
If the government has answers, the government will give the answers. My job is not to say, oh, the government is so good and so lovely and I love them so much. No, that's not a journalist's job. That's a PR man's job. The government has its own cells to spread that propaganda. A journalist's job, no matter how much I may support the government in power. One of my favorite chief ministers of all time, I have interviewed her many times, was Sheila Dikshit. She, I think, did more for Delhi than anybody else has ever done. Right. Now, but I interviewed Sheila Dikshit in the middle of the Commonwealth Games scam, where she and her son were implicated. Right. And I don't care how much I personally like and respect you. I am going to go in there and I'm going to be like, madam, your name is in a scam. You as the chief minister of Delhi have compromised yourself. Right. It has nothing to do with whether I like her or dislike her. It is my job as a journalist to ask those in power questions. Asking them questions doesn't make me anti-national or whatever is the catchphrase. It makes me a journalist. As simple as that. And sooner or later, we have to accept it. That if you're a journalist, you have to have asked the right questions and get the answers. And until you do not get the answers, you need to keep questioning. That's how the journalism works. And that's how it has been working for so many years. It's not an attack. I think one of the things that really weirds me out about a lot of the right wing, if you will, because again, I think these terms are ridiculous. I don't think they work for India. I think we've imported Western terms which we are applying to our country. Correct. I think that none of these terms work. Right. Is that they're like, you always criticize the Prime Minister. And I'm like, that's my job. Of course I'm going to criticize the Prime Minister because I have to say, okay, so he's doing this for COVID. Why isn't he also doing this? Right. And the answer is possibly entirely simple, which is, that is going to be a part of the next step. We have consulted people. It doesn't work right now. It could be a perfectly straightforward answer. And I'd be like, okay, fair enough. That is an explanation. True. But if you don't answer it, then we've got a problem. Because then what you're doing is not allowing basic information to be circulated. Correct. That's correct. So that's very important to understand. So, Professor, we have two more things to understand. One is that a lot of students and especially the parents are concerned about the career option. What career is going to be? So after UG, what you are going to do. Second is that with social media, with the presence and having all the equipment, creating a personal brand after you pass out from college.
And third is because I see most of the people aspire to become a TV anchor, which is the most mainstream thing. So these three things, I think you are the right person to answer these three things. So first is if we can start with the career option, because that is the most important thing every parent want to hear from an expert.
So let me start with a disclaimer, which is that I can only, of course, speak on behalf of the career options you would get if you graduated from the School of Journalism. Um, other schools have different courses designed in different ways, and I cannot speak to what it is that they would do after that from
So
those
I think
specific
before we
courses.
get into that, can you talk us for 1 minute about Jindal School of Journalism and Media Studies so that we get the clarity about that too?
Absolutely. So the Jindal School of Journalism was founded on one basic principle that then the principle, and this is remember during my interview, the question that the vice chancellor asked me, which is what makes a good journalist?
Okay.
And the answer was a good journalist is somebody who can tell a good story.
Who can tell?
A good story.
Oh, great.
At the end of the day, a journalist is a storyteller. I can give you all the facts and figures in the world. I can be like 40,000 cases of COVID today. Okay, that means nothing to a viewer. 40,000 is a figure. What I will, the story is about that one person who walked with his elderly parents on his shoulders to a hospital because that to a hospital 200 kilometers away because that was the closest place they could get treatment because hospitals were full. There are so many COVID patients that hospitals were full. That's a story. And a
I think
journalist
that's a very important point. It's a learning for me also, and it should be a learning for all of you who are watching as a journalist student. It's a story. And this reminds me of our student Arvind, who was distributing medicine through his bicycle in Kolkata, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's the story we picked, and I remember we are repeating it for almost more than 50 times in all our sessions.
But it's so admirable because it ticks off so many of the boxes that you want to see from a good journalist. It shows an engagement with the community. It shows an understanding of what young people can and should be doing. It shows an understanding of the problems that are cropping up as a result of a crisis. And it's a great story to tell people because it's a story. Right?
That's true.
So there's that. So that's one thing, right? Which is be a storyteller. How do you become a good storyteller is the next question. Now, a good storyteller needs 4 skills. One, they have to have a facility of a language. They have to be able to write. Second, as a good storyteller has to have a sense of the world around him. Okay? You have to, what story will tug the heartstrings? What story will make most impact? How do I contextualize that story? How get a story that tells the reality of the world we live in today? For that, you have to understand the world you live in, right? So that's the second skill set. The third skill set is to use different tools to tell that story. There are some stories which work best with sound. There are some stories that work best in images. There are some stories that work best in words. Different stories work with different techniques. And if you have images, then how do you arrange those images for your story to be told in the most powerful way possible? So that's the third component of it. And the fourth component of it is understanding your audience. This is where the social media component that you were talking about comes in, Ashish, which is who are you telling the story to? Are you telling the story to, which, say you're an Instagram user, right? Which a lot of our students are. The audience for Instagram is very different from the audience for TikTok. The way you tell your story changes because your audience changes. The way you pitch your changes. The way the peg of changes because your audience changes. So those are the 4 critical things that this course was based on. Because those are the 4 things.
So one more thing I wanted to ask here, that do they also need to pick a specialization of what kind of story they want to tell?
So I don't pick a specialization primarily because we're an undergraduate course. I don't think that it is necessary at the undergraduate level, or to go back to what I was saying earlier, which is leave your options open. Learn the skills, leave your options open. This is the kind of job that we cannot train you to know what you want to do. We can train you to go out there and find what you want to do.
Right.
So it's like saying, do you specialize in law at the undergraduate level? You don't.
Right.
You go out and you work in litigation and you work in corporate and you work in criminal law until you decide what you want to specialize in. Similarly, in journalism, we will give you the tools and then you go and you figure out what kind of journalist you want to be, whether it's a political. So for my own case, right? I was a economy reporter, business and economy reporter. And there's a very good reason for it. I reported crime stories and all of that. And I hated it. I hated going to a grieving family and saying, "हाँ तो आपका बेटा मर गया, कैसा लग रहा है आपको?"
Oh.
I hated it. You have to do it. Like, unfortunately, you do have
Unfortunately,
to do it.
you have to do it. Right?
But you do have to do it. But it was not for me. And so I moved to a job where the worst thing I was doing is going to a businessman and being like, "तो आपका सारा पैसा गया?" Like, literally, that was the worst question I would be asking. And I was much more comfortable doing that. But there are people for whom going into riot-struck areas is what works for them. They're good at it. They're empathic. They're sensitive. They're kind. And those people, so again, that's a matter of personality. I cannot tell you what kind of journalist to be. That you have to decide yourself.
So this is very important to understand the personality, and that you will understand with time. I think that's not an instant possibility.
Time and experience.
Time and experience. Right.
Yeah.
Second, I personally am as an advocate of creating a personal brand. So I believe that irrespective of you are in a job or doing something on your own, you should create a personal brand, because we are living in the golden age where social media gives you the ability to have a personal brand wherein people know you for something, for why you exist. What are your views on that, and how the journalism students can create their own personal brand?
So a personal brand is something I am a little skeptical about for journalists, specifically journalists, not for other spaces. I think for somebody who is going into blogging or not even for all journalists, if you're going in for example, for fashion journalism, having a personal brand which shows that you are interested in, keen on and knowledgeable about fashion, fantastic. You're going into sports journalism, you can showcase that knowledge and that brand.
Showcase those players and everything.
Exactly. Sure, and just showcase your knowledge. Just talk about like, watching so-and-so is reminding me of such and such and such time. It's just a cool way for people to engage with you personally.
Correct.
It is in spaces like political journalism where I don't think that a personal brand is a good idea. Because a personal brand, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, can lead to accusations of bias.
So because my notion comes from management side of, when I tell the management students that even if you're working, you should have a personal brand for what you're known for or how your knowledge speaks, because that is going to help you a lot in your career. But for journalism, you say that if you're in political,
as I said, not for all journalism. If you are in, as I said, if you're a business journalist, for example, you can't do it. You cannot have a personal brand, because then the chances of you being accused of insider trading can be very high.
True.
You know?
This is a flip side.
So we were told that you are absolutely going to have no speculative details of any business on your Twitter profile at all. Only thing you can talk about is ye bola hai. Stocks. This is
so
what
the third party view. So the third party view which you receive.
The third party view, you will say nothing. So even if there was information that you had, nothing on your opinion, because that's insider trading. So with those spaces, you have to be very careful about your personal brand.
So I think this gives us a lot of clarity on personal brand and how you need to shape. Irrespective of who you are, you will exist on social media. But the difference comes in that whether your views or the third party views is depending on what exactly you are doing. And Professor, you have cleared it in the best way possible. And I think lot of students will get it as very helpful. Now, third thing we were coming on is the secrets to become a TV anchor, because we
So
all aspire for
I
that sooner or later in our life.
okay. The secret to being a TV anchor is not getting nervous ever, and that knowing a little bit about everything, being able to talk about it, and relatively knowledgeably. Again, you don't have to be an expert, but relatively knowledgeably, and not getting nervous
But how do you get
is
there? Nobody is
very
going to give you a chance. How do you get there
you
first?
you have to prove your worth. That's the only way to do it. Now, again, there are different kinds of TV anchoring. Okay, news anchoring is just one. We have anchors who work for, you know, fashion spaces, sports spaces, things like that. Uh, but in every kind of anchoring, you have to prove that you don't freeze up in front of a camera.
So this is most important thing, that you need not to be nervous, and or I think we can say that you have to be confident in all situations.
You have to be confident in all situations, and you have to be able to talk in all situations.
Able to talk.
And you can't talk gibberish. You have to be able to make sense.
And all topics also,
And all
because you
topics.
don't know which topic comes.
You're a little better off, again, if you're in a more specialized field, again, if you're in fashion or sports or something like that, because then your topics get narrow.
Correct.
So if so this old college friend of mine who's now possibly in one of India's most famous sports anchors, Mayanti Langar. And Mayanti started off as a football reporter, became a football anchor, then moved to cricket. But her entire point was specializing in one sport. Right? So that's much more specialized. But if you're it's a niche area. It's a niche area. But if you're a generic news anchor, then in a single bulletin, you can talk about parliamentary clashes. You can talk about murders. You can talk about plane crashes. You can talk about golf tournaments or tennis tournaments, and you have to know enough to be able to talk a little bit about all. You also have to know enough to be able to ask questions to people, because there are going to be interviews coming up. So if you've watched a news bulletin, the way it works is you've got your breaking news comes in, you say something about it, and meanwhile, your production crew is pulling up what are called phonos, which are telephonic interviews. So as a phono comes in, you go to that person and you have to ask them a question that makes sense. And you have to do this without losing any time at all. Remember, you're on air right through.
Right, correct. So in addition to the same, So in addition to the same, I have one more thing to ask is that now when students are in college, they join college, they often start a YouTube channel or a podcast, right? So what would be your suggestion? Because they still have 3 years to do something. And they still have a great possibility of creating something on their own when they come out of college. So what would be your suggestion for these students?
I encourage it completely. But I also think that they need to understand what it is that the YouTube channel or the podcast is contributing to them. There is nothing as good as a portfolio. A portfolio is one of the most useful things you can have. And a YouTube channel is exactly that. It is a portfolio. It is a part of your CV, right? But what is it that your YouTube channel does? Is your YouTube channel you looking at camera and talking? If it is, then I hate to break it to you, but unless you're incredibly interested, chances are you don't have very high viewers. Okay? People work. On the other hand, if it's a cool, interesting channel with like good visuals, some fun music, all of those things, then suddenly the chances of your visibility gets better. So my advice to those people would be, listen very carefully to the skills that are being taught to you in school. It's why we exist. I'm not saying your YouTube channel wouldn't be great without it. We can help you make it better.
And I think if we could summarize it, there are 2 points which are important. One is the content is king. And second is what value you give to your viewers or the listeners?
One of the things that I see a lot, and I've seen this right through the last 3 years with very bright students, is they're like, I want to give my opinion. And my first question is, my dear, why do you think we would care about your opinion? You're 18 years old. What is it that you have to add that other 18-year-olds don't?
True.
Okay, so
that's true.
Who are you?
And that's who is your audience? A 12-year kid?
Who's your audience? Yeah, pretty much. And that's fine, but why then why would the 12-year-old watch?
Correct.
Who are you? What are you contributing?
Right.
And I think that's the question that students starting a YouTube channel should ask themselves. What are they contributing? Because nobody cares about your opinion. What they care about is a larger narrative. If you look at people who have done very, very well in the personal brand building on YouTube, when it comes to sort of journalistic topics, if you look at Dhruv Rathi, or if you look at Meghnad, or if you look at Akash Banerjee, or you look at any of these people, what are they doing? They are doing graphs. Dhruv's whole thing was data. Dhruv is taking data and breaking it down for you. He's not saying this is my opinion. He is saying this is what the data is showing. This is data you guys may not be able to analyze. I am breaking it down for you. Okay? For you. Or you could be able to analyze it, but you don't want to waste your time analyzing it, so I'm doing it for you. Okay? Akash's whole thing is humor. It's satire. He's like, here are funny jokes that I'm going to have on very serious political issues. Right? So there are different ways of building your brand, and none of them are your opinion. Unless you are Arundhati Roy. I don't care about your opinion. Very few people do.
Correct. So Professor, we started this interview or this video with your journey of some PhD, because the ultimate goal was PhD, right? So would you want to share your progress on that too?
Well, I have admission into a PhD program in the US. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, I cannot go. So I am going to be in India teaching for at least another year, if not more.
Okay. And where exactly you are going?
Going to the University of Iowa.
Oh, great. So we wish you all the very best for your ultimate goal of getting a PhD. And
thank you so
that's
much.
Going to, I think that's going to shape up a great academicians in the journalism industry.
Thank you, Ashish.
So it's really a pleasure to have you here talking about journalism, and especially helping students understand what works and what not, and getting to know a lot more. But of course, maybe, is it possible if students would want to contact you or talk to you or get your guidance?
Sure. Absolutely. My email is on the JSJC website. It's ksen@jgu.edu.in. Feel free to drop me a line anytime, and I would be glad to answer your questions.
So what we'll do is we'll put your email ID in the description of this video, so that if any student who would want to contact you over email can drop your email for any kind of guidance or suggestions needed. And that would be really very helpful for them.
Sounds good.
Right.
Sounds good. One last message, Ashish, and that is for anyone coming into journalism in now. You are at the cusp of transformative change. The world is changing, and you're the ones who are going to be building it. Isn't us? We did what we had to do for the last 20 years. In fact, in a way, we had it easy. You're not going to have it easy, but it's going to be fun.
It's going to be worth it.
It's going to be worth it. You're building the world.
Exactly. You're building the world, and your opinions matter.
Yes. And you know the way to tell stories to your audience, to your contemporaries. I don't. You do.
Exactly. And I think if I want to summarize it in one line, what I have learned from this overall video is journalism is storytelling.
It is.
Right?
That's
so
exactly what it is.
I was taking it wrong way for so long, and this is completes a shift in view today, that from today onwards, I'll see every video, every journalist, every article as a story being told.
And that's exactly what it is. My job here is done.
Exactly. Right. So thank you so much, Professor, for joining us. We wish you all the very best for your upcoming PhD and also for all the endeavors you're looking for. It was a pleasure talking to you and all, of course, a great learning experience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. It was a pleasure.